Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of Dangerous Rhythm by C.R. Elam, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me. Chapter 1, New York City, a bitter night in December. I gotta get the fuck out of here. The heavy door slammed shut, muting the eardrum shattering music playing on the club floor. Despite the concrete wall, the beats still echoed in the dimly lit hall. He swore the pounding was in his head, prompting him to seek refuge from the throbbing ache. He massaged his temples to ease the pain, but it clung on. I should lay off the booze. Though thinking about it, he hadn't finished the drink he ordered a couple of hours ago. While the group he was there with had hit the floor, Curtis had stayed in the booth, nursing the one glass of neat scotch. He didn't feel like grinding himself against a throng of sweaty, drunk people. He wasn't sure why he'd come. The club wasn't even his vibe, but he had nothing better to do. The air in the hallway was much cooler than the suffocating club. It penetrated his shirt and warm skin and did a better job of clearing his head. He threw his leather jacket on and looked along the hallway for a red exit sign. When he didn't see one, he turned to his right, toward the east. If his memory of the club's general layout was correct, there had to be a door leading to the outside from there, he figured. No way he would jump back into that cesspool and find his way out to the main door. Ah, here we go. Finally spotting the red glowing sign at the end of the hallway, Curtis pushed through the door and found himself in a stairwell. He was about to skip down the stairs when he heard a voice pleading. Please, please, I wasn't trying anything. It's not me. Curtis froze by the door listening. You better keep your fucking hands off of her, another voice threatened. The sound of bone breaking and an agony-filled scream echoing in the cavern and an agony-filled scream echoed in the cavernous space. Snatching out his phone, Curtis dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? An operator questioned. I'm at the Morgan's Club. The sound of a man beating the shit out of another person interrupted Curtis and sent his already pissy mood into full-on rage. He flew down to the level below, not finishing his report to the operator. Hey, get off of him, Curtis yelled as a guy holding up a bloody man against the wall came into view. Without thinking, Curtis grabbed the attacker by the collar of his tacky shirt and pulled him off the other man. It all happened so fast, the assailant reeled back from Curtis and swung an arm at him. Curtis jumped back as a flash of silver slashed the air between them. The voice of the 911 operator came through over the speakerphone asking what was going on. Back off, the guy warned with his arm jetted toward Curtis. Curtis's eyes zeroed in on the pointy knife dripping with blood in the other man's hand and instinctively put his hands up in a defensive stance while backing up to put distance between them. Easy. Curtis tried to calm the situation. He's barely a man. Gone was the bravado Curtis had heard in the younger man's voice earlier. Panic filled his eyes as he took in Curtis, who towered over most people. Sir, I'm sending responders to your location right now. The operator's voice rang loudly between them. Can you tell me what's going on? Fucking hang up. The attacker shook his knife at Curtis. Put the knife down, Curtis urged in a steady voice. Hang up the phone. Sure, I'll hang up. Curtis made a show of lifting his phone as if he was about to disconnect the call, but with a swipe of his thumb, he snapped a picture and turned on the video recording instead. Adrenaline surged through him as he racked his brain for ways to give hints to the operator about their location. But you know the police will storm this stairwell through that emergency exit any minute, so you better put the knife down. Shut up. Fucking shut up. Kid, I don't want any trouble, okay? Curtis sidestepped toward the unmoving man who had slid down the wall and crumpled on the ground. Blood pulling Blood was pooling underneath him. Shit, did you knife him? Fuck you. The operator, thankfully, got the silent memo and stayed quiet. Curtis hoped she was sending an ambulance too, and that help would get there ASAP. As if on cue, the blare of sirens came from a distance. Knowing he might be surrounded by law enforcement at any minute, the man lunged at Curtis, just like any cornered animal would. Curtis jumped to the side to evade the sharp point of the knife and grabbed his opponent's wrist and twisted. The younger guy screamed in pain, and the knife clanked as it hit the concrete floor. Curtis pushed and sent him scrambling back, but with the agility of youth, he caught himself before falling on his ass and bounced back. Curtis braced himself for another strike, but the guy stormed right past him through the door and ran into the night. Hey, Curtis yelled after him, but the slight grin behind him made him turn. He dashed back to the injured man. Hey, man, hang in there, okay? Help's on the way. Sir, can you speak now? The voice spoke again on the phone. I have officers arriving on scene. Is the person with the knife still there? Is anyone hurt? No, he ran. Curtis put his phone on the floor as he knelt and eyed the now unconscious man. But there's a man stabbed. There's a lot of blood. I don't know where he's hurt. EMT will be there in 2 minutes, the operator said. If you can find the source of the blood, put pressure on it. Can you do that for me, sir? Ah, Curtis stammered. Facing a guy with a knife seemed easier. He trained for that. Treating a stabbing victim wasn't part of the mixed martial arts program he'd been doing for the past year. I will guide you, the operator said calmly. Can you tell me your name, sir? Curtis, he answered. It's Curtis. Okay, Curtis, deep breath, the operator said. He inhaled and blew it out. You're doing great. Now, do you see where the blood mostly is? Scanning the man's left side where his shirt was soaked, Curtis confirmed and listened to the rest of the instructions in a dazed, automated mode. He bunched part of the man's shirt and pressed it against the wound on his stomach with the heel of his hand as hard as possible. His mind traveled elsewhere as his hands did what they needed to do until an officer came running in and pulled him back, and an EMT took his place. Standing against a wall, he couldn't take his eyes off the bleeding man as the EMT worked to stabilize him. The officer stood in front of him, peppering him with questions, but Curtis didn't hear what he was saying. He watched them wheel out the man, but somehow his gut knew that man was gone. Chapter 2, New York City, mid-January. A gentle swish of a glass door opening, allowing a quick burst of the outer office buzz-in, made Lina Cheung swivel in her chair to face whoever just entered her office. You're back, said the bear of a man who suddenly made her office cramp. Lina smiled at her boss, Marcus Barrett. You knew very well I'm back. You probably know which flight I was on, what time it landed, and who sat next to me in 4B. Nobody sat next to you because you had the single business class seat by the window, he replied with a grin, pointing out her attempt to trick him. It's good to see you, kid. Lena walked around her desk to give Marcus a quick hug. He might technically be her boss and a former senior officer in the Army, but he was also a good friend and a confidant. Nobody knew her like Marcus Barrett did, and he was the only person who could call her kid without risking having their ass kicked. Enveloped in his thick arms, she felt like a pixie that he could easily squash, though at 5'9", she wasn't dainty. She wasn't easy to squash either. You and Ken didn't miss me too much, did you? Lena quipped. Ken Yasuda was the other named partner of Barrett and Yasuda Security. She herself was one of the 3 junior partners and the newest at 6 months in the position. Of course we did, Marcus retorted with a smirk as he sat in her guest chair. For a retired colonel, he didn't have a stern bone in his body, but authority exuded from his every pore. Nobody could miss it. You did good getting the Soros account set up with our partners in Europe. I've read the report. It was a well-spent month, despite hitting the holidays and all. Lena perched on the edge of her desk. It had to be done. The Soros Agriculture Group was one of Greece's biggest businesses. Securing them as a retainer client for Barrett and Yasuda Security was a big notch on Lena's belt. Working over the holidays hadn't bothered her. After dedicating a decade of her life to the Army, she found most of B&Y's work relaxing. As if he knew what she was thinking, Marcus said, I'm glad you decided to join us 4 years ago. I know we see little action, but Lena shook her head, interrupting him. Believe me, I don't miss it. She remembered feeling so burnt out from the action that she grabbed the fluff job Marcus had offered her when she'd gotten out of the military. Running security for a rock band on tour had been exactly what she'd needed. Traveling the country and through Europe had been practically a vacation for her. Readjustment to civilian life hadn't been easy, and she was grateful for those memorable months with Canis Major. Again, as if he was in her head, Marcus asked, You remember that band you covered when you first joined us? He handed her a file he'd been holding. Lena's eyes narrowed on Marcus as she seriously wondered if he was clairvoyant. You want me to get a team ready for another tour? Is this the schedule? I'll start working on the plan. I think John would be a good lead for it. No, it's not about the band. He gestured for her to look at the file. Lena opened it and found a copy of a police report. She scanned the content and certain words popped out to her. Stabbing, stiletto, died on scene. Then her breath caught in her Then her breath caught in her throat. Curtis Bisset. Her alarmed gaze flew back to Marcus for a brief second before diving back into the report, reading it more thoroughly. Curtis Bisset witnessed the stabbing of Sean Murphy at the Morgan's nightclub. He identified and provided evidence against the perpetrator, leading to the arrest of Rocco Stiletto. Rocco Stiletto? Is this one of those stilettos? Lina questioned, thinking of the city's infamous organized crime family. Marcus confirmed with a nod. He is Serafina Stiletto's youngest son. Shit. Why is Curtis's name all over this report? Shouldn't the police keep his identity concealed? It is now. We made sure of it when his name popped up on our morning report that day. Ken's army of computer whizzes scanned the internet 24/7 for anything concerning their clients, corporations and the people involved with them, and Marcus's network of informants did the same for anything they couldn't find on the internet. Since Curtis Bisset's band, Canis Major, was under the wing of Aquarius Media Corp, a big client for BNY, he was a person of interest to them. Most of the reports concerning their celebrity clients were benign gossip or media related, but when their names popped up on a police blotter, it would send a red alert to Marcus or Ken. Lina glanced at the date of the police report, December 12th. This report is a month old. She flipped to the next set of papers, some news article printouts. She started reading them. The stabbing victim was a member of the Murphy family, formerly known as the Irish Mob, and a Stiletto rival. They used to deal in the same stuff Stiletto is in, but the Murphys have gone legit, at least on paper. From what we know, he had no record except for a note of his familiar connection with the Murphys. But the two young men got into it. One ended up dead and the other in jail, Marcus said. Does Curtis need to appear in court to testify? Lina asked, already thinking about the protection he'd need during a trial that would definitely get a lot of attention. And the press wasn't her concern at all. Well, that's not an issue anymore, Marcus said. Rocco Stiletto was shipped last night in jail, presumably a revenge kill by the Irish. That information wasn't in the file. Lina set it aside. Damn, Lina said. That's not a good development, but it is a problem for the NYPD. Why are you bringing this up? She had a good idea of what the answer to her question was, but the look in Marcus's eyes confirmed it. Rocco was Serafina Stiletto's baby. She is out for blood, Marcus said. Understanding what that meant, Lina straightened. We need to ensure Curtis Bisset's identity isn't leaked to the Stilettos. You know better than I do that these people have their own sources within the police department. Who knows about Curtis? Detective Steve Bolt and the ADA, then there are the first responders at the club, Marcus answered. Meaning the Stilettos could easily get his name if they were asking, Lina concluded. I've heard no one asking. They're asking. They most likely already have it. Lina grabbed her jacket. We need to assess the situation. I'll go check on Curtis. Good. I was going to suggest you do that while I put my ears on the ground. I'll have Ken's people keep an eye out on their end. Lina walked out of her office, Marcus right behind her. Where's Ken? She asked as they walked to the elevator banks. On a special project in Southeast Asia, Marcus said. Lina nodded. If Marcus could elaborate, he would, but he didn't. Without another question, she swiped her specially coded card to open the door. Hey, Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. The Stilettos are most likely to focus on the Murphys. This is just a precaution. Of course, we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't make sure there is no threat. Before she slipped through the door, Lina added, but when it comes to Serafina Stiletto, we can never be too careful.